All right, how you doing? When I first started reading these Tri-Axium writings, the one thing that stuck with me from decades ago was the invitation in, and so I'm going to read a little bit from the construction section. Mr. Braxton says, each of the books in this series of writings is constructed so as to ensure maximum idea interchange. This has been done in accordance with my belief that given viewpoints must now be examined not only on more than one level or focus, but rather as many levels as possible. What an open-minded, forward-looking statement. If only discourse today in the media, online, if only that were the starting point. If people were looking at every facet of a point or an argument rather than just their own thrust through the argument. The thrust of this effort is conceived as a composite attempt to examine the whole of Earth creativity, and as such, the reality of a given definition must be presented in its broadest terms, he says, quote unquote, there, be presented in its broadest terms, because I'm not concerned with only some aspect of what seems to be true. I'm interested in what seems to be really true, which I think is an interesting way to put it. It's not like he's saying, I'm interested in the truth. There's a humility there, right? I'm interested in what seems to be really true. Later he says, for the great thrust of creative music writings in this time period, and he's talking about the 73 to 80, I think he says, are extremely uncreative attempts at journalism, and this is especially interesting when one considers the position jazz critics have put themselves in, that being attempting to evaluate the worth of other people's creativity. And I read that statement and go, man, what a great time to be alive, because shit, there is so much humble, thorough commentary on music on a platform like YouTube. You can see who I follow to see some of these folks, but there are just lots of really open, honest, empathetic thinkers. Whether they're putting things in boxes or not is maybe kind of a different story, but I don't think it's out of malice, like maybe was the case in the past where an opportunist journalist might have bungled things. The dictates of these books are constructed so that the reader must read through the material in at least 6 ways. Different ways, and the interconnection of the concepts are set up so as to give maximum diversity. I love that idea. Will I ever read these books 6 different ways? There's another beautiful statement up here. It is my hope that an approach of this nature might prove useful for establishing a more realistic look at creative music. For much of the literature I have seen on this subject seems either too simplistic or doctorial. I gotta agree. I love the centrism, I guess, that I read in so much of what he says. Later on, and this is the thing that keeps me coming back to these, I've had them checked out from the library on and off for the last year, and I decided I need to get my own set so that I'm always ready to capitalize on energy I have to dive into them when I have an itch that only something like this can scratch, which seems to be every few weeks these days. So, me posting about these things might be up or down. Here's what I love. To really utilize this book in the way I've intended, the reader is expected to read this in one of 6 different ways, okay? He kind of reiterates a bit what he said before. He's saying, read it completely beginning to end, skip through the different sections, reading each of the 3 levels that he's laid out here. The 3 kind of angles on the topic at hand that he takes. Read only isolated concepts that he's put in bold type, which is kind of hard to see in this format where we're talking about like generations of photocopying, I think, at this point. This point number 6 here that he says on Roman numeral 9, on page Roman numeral 9. The reader is asked to translate my terminology from the glossary and throughout the whole book as a means to view each focus in one's own terms. In other words, I am saying this is my viewpoint in this context and these are my terms, but what do you think with respect to your own personal viewpoint and or perception dynamics in the context of my terminology as well as your own terminology about this same information? Only after all of the approaches have been tried can the reader really have some idea of what it is I'm trying to communicate. Yet on this comment, it is important to explain my intentions. I haven't meant to imply that my understanding of phenomenon is such that one must necessarily reach from my so-called level, because to believe this has nothing to do with reality. Dude, what a humble guy. I mean, he's diving so deep into like a topic of such wild depth and expansive range that it's so cool to hear such like humility and inclusion. You maybe have to dig for it a little bit. You have to open your eyes, read or reread a few times, but I read him to an invitation. I read inclusion. So that's one point that I felt the need to kind of amplify from the books as I kind of get into them and reread the first 100 pages, which is where I got last time I picked these up. Thanks for watching.